Hello, in this video we're going to be reviewing the Clockwork Island Adventure movie of One Piece. This movie is the second of the One Piece's theatrical features and is the last movie we see before the pirates of the Straw Hat crew go to the Grand Line. Although it's not clear whether or not the movie happens in the East Blue or if it happens on their way to meet Vivi, because she's not in the crew yet. So they could either be on one side or the other of the Grand Line at this point in the lore. The story follows the Straw Hat Pirates who are out at sea while they find a nice island to relax on. Suddenly they realize that their boat is floating away from the island and they try to reach it but are too far away and the Mary is stolen. They captain a dinghy that they use to search for the Going Mary and run into two thieves. One a little boy named Akisu and the other a man named Boruto, who claim to be brothers, although they're not related by blood. These two brothers tell them that their ship was stolen by the Bear King and the Trump Pirates. Eventually, the Trump Pirates meet the thieves and the Straw Hats out at sea. They have a small skirmish before the Straw Hats realize that they are outmatched and at a disadvantage because they're not at their ship, and they left most of their valuables and weapons on their ship, as Zoro is without his swords, Usopp is without his slingshot, and Sanji is without his shoes. I'll also mention that Nami is also without her bow staff, but she doesn't really fight in this movie. Usopp tries to help them escape, but as the Trump Pirates get closer to them, they decide to steal Nami because the Bear King, their leader, needs a wife, and Nami happens to be wearing a wedding gown. She's dressed like this because the Straw Hats had to impersonate a wedding party in order for them to get hold of the dinghy that they used to locate the Going Mary. They make their way to Clockwork Island, the place where the Trump Pirates are located and the location of their stolen ship. They have to make their way up a giant spire or tower up to a clock city where there is a lot of different mechanical devices and technology as a part of these people's culture, although they are currently under the captivity of the Trump Pirates. The Straw Hats make their way up through the town and to the Trump Castle, which is inspired by playing cards, which all the minions and the Trump Pirates seem to dress as. One by one, the Straw Hats are defeated and captured, particularly because they're at a disadvantage because they don't have any of their weapons with them. But they fight back as much as they possibly can. Luffy finds himself trapped between a floor and a ceiling that are mechanically becoming closer to each other. We find that Akisu and Boruto are the ones who stole the Going Mary, in order to get the now infamous Straw Hat Pirates to defeat the Trump Pirates and free the island, which happens to be the home and birthplace of Akisu, which he was spirited away from by his parents who wanted him to be free from pirate rule. Eventually, Luffy frees himself and defeats the Trump Pirates with the aid of the rest of his crew, who have their weapons and are able to defeat the Trump lieutenants. Akisu is reunited with his parents but decides to leave his island, which was destroyed after the Trump Pirates were defeated and the diamond clock that was at the top of the castle rings, but was destroyed, and so his home island figures out how to rebuild as Akisu decides to live his life as a thief with his brother Boruto. Some of the things that I really liked about this movie was the fact that it had a lot better animation than the previous film, especially when it comes to the backgrounds. In this movie, we see a lot of the Straw Hat crew before the Grand Line, and we see them as an actual threat, as this is the first time that the Straw Hats have had a bounty in one of their movies. So it is nice to see the action, and it was nice to see the animation. Everything was a lot more fluid, and it felt like an actual team. Although it's fairly obvious that because of the way that this plot was structured, they had to depower the Straw Hats in order for them to have stakes in the story. Because they didn't have their weapons, they were at a significant disadvantage when faced with the Trump Pirates in the film. I'll also note that as an American, it's fairly difficult to ignore the similarities that this story has with the Trump dynasty. The enemy is known as the Trump Pirates. They live in a tower. It is filled with gold, and they have major lieutenants that are known as the Trump siblings. It's all very surreal watching and experiencing this and hearing those names and those words constantly as a viewer in the 2020s. But more than anything, I think that this connection speaks to how prophetic One Piece is as a story, and the way that One Piece, because of the way it's written, because of how the implications of the story reflect the real world, it's easy for it to kind of prophesize things to come, from pop culture to politics to international relations. And yet One Piece was made way before anything like that was even on anybody's minds. It's pretty interesting. One of the Trump siblings, known as Honey Queen, also has a very interesting devil fruit. I believe it was called the liquid fruit. They gave her the ability to turn her body into a fluid. I thought this was an interesting choice, particularly because people who have had devil fruits are unable to swim, so having her devil fruit being related to liquid is an interesting choice. But I think they played it very close to the chest, because even though she could turn into a liquid, she was not water per se, and she still could not swim, which is why she never got inside of the ocean in this movie, even though she was on it. And still to this day, there haven't been very many devil fruits that have been related to water or liquidity. There have been some abilities that have been adjacent to water-related devil fruits. One in which you can swim, in which your body is a swamp, or something like that. But there haven't been any that have been exactly related to water, because it seems that that would negate the downsides of having a devil fruit, which is you're unable to swim. So that addition to the story is interesting. The final thing that I thought was interesting about the story was I liked how they ended the story with Akisu returning to his brother to be a thief. I think this is interesting because it makes very strong similarities between that character and who Luffy is as a character. He's a climber. He's not strong enough, even though he wants to be strong. He didn't start off that way, and he certainly isn't strong enough compared to the other threats inside of the Grand Line, which in this movie he has not yet met. But it really points to the idea of a young man or a boy, in this case Akisu, who decides to defy his past and the expectation of his family in order to chart out his own path in the world and do and be what he finds meaningful, which is in general a trope within shonen, but also particularly in One Piece, as a thief is not someone that the world finds to be a useful member of society, just like pirates. Overall, I think this was a pretty good movie. I would give it a solid B. It was significantly better than the first movie in terms of its overall production value, and it was a fun take on One Piece. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you check out the One Piece Clockwork Island Adventure movie yourself. It is a very enjoyable film, and the first film that feels like a real Straw Hat adventure, with the whole crew in tow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.